what we'll do now is run through some of the questions that have been submitted. These are all really excellent questions that'll cover a lot of the areas that we talked about today: treatment, research, how do you assemble a care team. And what I would start with first is, and this is for anyone in the panel who wants to answer, and some of the themes that I saw as I looked through these really great questions that were asked were again about assembling your care team. And I think one really interesting question was that for those of us who are new to systemic therapy, what does the NET team look like, and how do we best coordinate medical care? So I'll start with maybe Dr. Halfdanarson. What does a NET team look like, and how do you figure out who needs to be on your team?
Those are great questions. So the NET team definitely changes over time, depending on your needs. And typically would think of that as a medical oncologist, a surgeon with expertise in cancer surgery, a pathologist, an imaging specialist, a radiologist, or a nuclear medicine physician, or both, and other sort of the specialties as needed, and we don't always have to involve everyone, but at least it makes sense to present at tumor board if there are any major changes, so everyone gets to put their gets their input in on what should be done next. It can be a one person. Like a lot of time, I am the NET team. I'm the only person who's seeing the patient for that visit, and we don't really need another one for that. But when there are major changes, we need help.
There was a question about, does a cardiologist need to be brought in early? At what time do you start to think about involving cardiologists?
So for cardiology, for everyone with a functional small bowel nerve tumor, so nerve tumor producing serotonin that might potentially damage your heart valves, this is a disease that really sneaks up on you. And so we tend to be a little bit more aggressive than many others, and I'm not saying that's necessarily the only way or the right way to do it. So if there is elevation of the serotonin or the 5-HI, we screen with echocardiograms every 1 to 2 years, and then intervene if there is some valve damage, and then we get the cardiologist involved.
Thanks.
Sure. There are a couple of questions that are actually very appropriate for Dr. Chan. A couple on cabozantinib, and Dr. Chan, as you guys may know, led the phase 3 trial for cabozantinib. So maybe I'll just pose both of them. What is the status of using cabozantinib to treat pancreatic NETs? How does it compare to lenvatinib? And then based on current treatments as well as new ones like cabozantinib, what do you think the future of NET treatment sequencing will look like? So maybe first define, what are these drugs that end in IB?
I was going to start off with that. So these medications, sunitinib, cabozantinib, lenvatinib, they are in a class of medications that we call tyrosine kinase inhibitors. And Dr. Heaphy in his talk spoke about angiogenesis and the important role that angiogenesis plays in cancer biology, and especially in neuroendocrine tumors. So angiogenesis is really this process of forming new blood vessels that supports the growth and spread. The way that the tyrosine kinase inhibitors work is they really block signaling through these tyrosine kinase receptors that ultimately will lead to growth and development of blood vessels. The only tyrosine kinase inhibitor that's currently used right now to treat or approved to treat neuroendocrine tumors is sunitinib for pancreatic neuroendocrine tumors. But there has been a lot of interest in exploring other angiogenesis inhibitors, other tyrosine kinase inhibitors. So we, through the National Clinical Trials Network, through the NCI, and in the cooperative groups within that clinical trials mechanism, conducted a phase 3 trial looking at cabozantinib compared with placebo for patients with both pancreas neuroendocrine tumors as well as neuroendocrine tumors arising outside of the pancreas. And what the results of the trial showed, and we presented this last year, is that it significantly slowed progression compared to placebo. So we're aiming to have this added to the approved drugs that will be available in the future. It hopefully will be reviewed by the FDA sometime this year, and we'll hopefully learn whether or not it's approved. Right now, it's not approved. Sometimes you can prescribe medications off-label. So that would be true for cabozantinib, true for lenvatinib. And how they differ from one another really is just by the receptors that they target. They're a little bit different. All of these IBs are a little bit different from one another. So I think that probably answers all those questions. Yeah. In terms of sequencing, I think we really are still left with trying to make the decisions for patients based on their disease, what our goals of treatment are. These tyrosine kinase inhibitors, they may slow progression, but they're not as good as, for instance, PRT or chemotherapy for shrinking disease. So a lot of the sequencing really takes into account what the goals are. There have been some studies that have shown that PRT may be better than at least sunitinib in slowing disease progression. But again, really just trying to look through what the goals are in patients' other medical conditions to help us choose treatments. Yeah, I'll go down the list again to think about, this is an interesting one about research in general for Dr. Heaphy. Do you think CAR T therapy will have a role in treating neuroendocrine tumors in the future? I know there's a lot of work that's being done looking at CAR T. A lot of the research has been sponsored by NETRF, but I'm curious what your thoughts are about this.
Yeah, I think in the research it definitely could play a role. Obviously, it's getting to the phase now of doing the first clinical trial, so we'll have to see how that clinical trial pans out. But I think in the general area, I think it has tremendous promise, but we're going to have to take it step by step. And so I think it has tremendous promise in NETs and also in other tumor types as well.
We're just having a brief conference. So, okay, we're nearing end. So we thought I'd ask one question of the panel. Does that sound okay? So something I often like to end on, especially when we have a panel, a multidisciplinary panel, and especially at a patient conference, I'm going to ask everyone to think about what you are most hopeful for in the field. And maybe we'll start with Dr. Halfdanarson down at the end and then kind of work our way back.
So I think I think we are finally starting to understand better what makes neuroendocrine tumors tick. So it's been a mystery to us what really keeps them going and growing. And I think as we get a better understanding of the sort of mechanisms within the cancer cells, I think we're ultimately going to get more precisely targeted therapy, which hopefully will also be less toxic in terms of less side effects. So that's really my great hope, is that better understanding of biology through researchers like Dr. Heaphy will ultimately lead to better treatments through clinical trials.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback on that comment, I'm really hopeful that patients would really consider clinical trials because, like I said in my talk, it is really one of our best ways to come up with new treatments that are effective in neuroendocrine tumors, different combinations of treatment, and making sure that they are safe and effective for a patient population within the neuroendocrine tumor space.
I suspect we have many of the same desires here. You know, I have had a great privilege of operating a lot of patients with neuroendocrine tumors, but if we had systemic therapies that made my job unnecessary, I'd be the happiest unemployed surgeon. But I think it's also, you know, cases like the second patient presented by Dr. Kunz, who might have had a great response to systemic therapy, then might have local options available that might not have been available with better therapies available to us systemically. More and more patients will be able to get curative intent therapy.
I think from a research standpoint, there's just tremendous technologies that are out there right now. Far and away, especially in the last 5 years, there's technologies like spatial transcriptomics, where we're not only just analyzing the tumor, but the immune cells, the other cells, stromal cells, the nerve cells, anything that's in tumor microenvironment. And we're doing it at the single cell level, and then we're seeing how those cells interact. And I think all those details are going to open up new avenues, especially on the research side, but new avenues of treatment and how, especially we can talk a little bit about immunotherapy, but I think you can really, if you understand the tumor microenvironment better, you can understand how immunotherapy may work. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I think it's an exciting time, and I think the future is bright, especially on the terms of research.
Yeah, I think I have similar thoughts to my colleagues. There has been a lot more research in neuroendocrine tumors over the last decade compared to where we had been, and I think that really has helped to advance the field. I think, as we've seen from some of the slides, there's been a number of new therapies, even in the last 5 years, that we didn't have before, and I'm optimistic that that's going to continue. I think we're hopefully going to be able to advance the care and take better care of patients in the future.
And I also agree with all that's been said. I'm also hopeful about bringing new physicians and providers into the field. We spent the morning having an educational event for physicians and providers and had a number of new faces and new faculty, and I find that exciting. So what I want you to take leaving tonight is this sense of hope, because I think that that's like critically important to the thrivership. So I'll pass back to Elise.
I want to thank everyone on our panel and all of our speakers. Again, another round of applause for all of them. We're incredibly grateful for everything that you do every day, and not only as you work with your teams and your facilities, but the way that you reach out. As Dr. Kunz said, training new physicians, bringing new people into the field, because that means that patients and families have more options, more people they can see, more people they can add to their care teams. And this really, this is a team sport, and it's very important. And just seeing the collaboration in this area, I will tell you from my years working in a hospital in oncology, you don't always see this level of collaboration. So this is a very special community, and we really appreciate that. We also appreciate all of you because you have hung in there for the entire program, and we hope that this has been valuable for you. We hope that we've been able to hit the mark in terms of the type of education that you've come here today for. And we also hope that you've learned something that you can take with you, some of those tips to thrive with neuroendocrine cancer. In addition to thanking Dr. Chan and Dr. Kunz for being our physician co-chairs, we also want to thank our sponsors because they help us make these programs possible. Novartis, Crinetics, Curium, Tercera, and Ren. And an incredible thank you and shout out to our entire NETRF team, particularly Jessica, who put this program together. We love doing this. We love getting out in the field so that we can talk with all of you and find out what you need and how we can help. And on that note, what we want to do is we want to ask you to just take a couple of minutes to answer a very quick survey, because we want to know if you learned what you had hoped to learn today coming here, and also what else you want to learn so we can put together future programs. So if you scan the code, then that will take you to the survey. Again, it's very quick, and the feedback would be just wonderful for us. If you want more information, we've talked a little bit today about some of our resources, our Net Knowledge Center, which is our portal for patient education. If you go there, you can find out everything from how to find a clinical trial, how to connect with a group in your area, everything about tumor stage and grade and thrivership and everything that we talked about today. So head to that page. If you want to really go in depth on some of the topics we talked about today, I really recommend our NetWise podcast because it is that opportunity to really pursue some of these topics in depth, hear from patients, hear from experts, and I think it will be a great resource for all of you. So again, you're not alone. We hope you found some hope and some new friends this afternoon. You're part of a very supportive and caring community. If there's anything that the NETRF team can do to help, please reach out. Give us a call, give us an email, and we just hope that you all have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you for joining us, and have a safe trip home.
Elise?
Yes.
There's one more person we need to thank, and that's Elise. Thank you so much.